All right, hello and welcome back to another weekly analysis video. As always, we're going to start with the SPX weekly chart, the big picture that I have here. And I just want you guys to notice we are in an uptrend. There's nothing technically wrong with this chart, and we definitely could be at new highs next week. Now, with that being said, that's not what I expect at all. The market has been showing signs of weakness. It has been showing signs of selling pressure, especially within the last few days here, very strong resistance. We have a trend line that we've been rejecting. We are in a weekly, monthly sell zone up here. This is going to be tough to get through. Now, can we get up to this top of this channel again? Of course we can. And I will tell you guys what to be looking for if that is what's going to happen. But with that being said, I'm going to dive into some smaller charts on the SPY and tell you why I am looking for a little bit of downside in the following week. So here we'll bring up the SPY daily chart. And if you guys can remember last week, I said I was looking for some downside in the SPY after this day here. And we didn't really get it. You know, we went sideways for a day, and we ended up breaking up the next day and closing a day above this breakdown candle high, which was something I noted to be watching for. If that was to happen, if other indices were to break their breakdown candle highs, that could be a bullish sign for the market. And so, it kind of was, but I also pointed out that there's another candle here, there's a gap up here. So there was really a lot of overhead resistance that the SPY would have had to get through, even if it did get through that first one. And so you guys can see we actually did make a new high here on this Thursday. We came back and almost got to that breakdown candle open there, and we came back, rejected, came back under this breakdown candle, right? So this is really the bogey on the upside for this next week, guys, is this zone. And even then, I would not be really swinging calls. I'd be definitely watching these next areas and just seeing how price reacts, try to maybe day trade a little bit, but I'd be very cautious this next week if we do go up and test again. So yeah, we have come back down and actually closed the week below this breakdown candle high again, which was, I think, the important one in the first place. And the market, it had a steep rally, and there's nothing wrong with maybe pulling back to fill these gaps here at 296 and possibly even 293.24. It might not get that far. But it's got a trend line down here. There's nothing that says we can't pull back. And I think with this heavy area of resistance up here, we should not be surprised if we see some downward movement in the market this next week, right? I just want to go down to an hourly real quick. And, you maybe get a better picture that this isn't necessarily movement of a strong market, We are going up to important levels. We're getting rejected. We're going up, rejection, up, rejection. We can actually see a little mini head and shoulders here that would typically play out to about this 296 level. So I am expecting this gap to be filled early next week. If not, if we come down and maybe stop here again at 297 and take off, that's going to be more bullish price action, and I will be taking note of that. So let's look at some sectors now. Let's go to the XLF financials. And so we knew these actually had some room. You can see this is the end of last week, this candle. I mentioned that these did have some room to their breakup candles or breakdown candle highs. And so if the market takes off, we would be looking for resistance just a bit higher when these indices reach their breakdown candle high. So we can see that's what happened with the XLF. Got up here. It is hanging around, which is not necessarily a bearish sign. It's keeping closed right underneath the high of it. So it's not necessarily bearish. It's not necessarily bullish. We are seeing some volatility in the XLF here within this price range. So we kind of just have to watch early next week if we start closing daily above this. That's a sign that we might be headed up to this zone up here, this much stronger resistance zone. So we will be watching that breakdown candle high, but still I'm looking for some gap fills. There's a gap here. These white lines are kind of just important levels I have marked out. So this general area, there's a gap down here. don't be surprised either way. Just be watching for breaks, especially under this breakup candle. If we get underneath that, it's probably not a good sign for the XLF. In order to remain bullish, I would want to hold above that candle's low and eventually work our way above that breakdown candle high. Let's look at the IWM. IWM, small caps, also had some room to its breakup candle high, and it did end up closing just 1 cent below the high. The close here is 153.34, and the high on the candle is 153.35. 1 cent. So no mistakes in the market, no mistakes with closes of days. 1 cent above might have been the difference. So no mistakes. But again, the IWM is still, it's hanging around. It did see quite a steep drop on Friday. That was, tried to recover and recovered sort of well at the end of the day. It did fill this gap here. So yeah, we'll be watching the same thing. Watch how we're acting around this 153, 35 price level. Can we close hourly, daily above that? Or do we continue to the downside underneath Friday's lows? That will be what I'm watching on the IWM. Now, let's look at the transportation average. This is something that is a bit different than the other charts. This is actually closed weekly above its breakdown candle high. So we can't really take that as bearish. We have to take it for what it is. And, we have to be aware that this thing could easily take off to this next zone up here at 10,670, and if it does, the market can see some upside. The SPY can go up and fill its gap. So we have to be watching these things in real time, watching hourly closes, daily closes throughout the beginning of the week to gauge where the market might be headed later in the week. All right. So definitely keep an eye on the transportation average and see if it wants to go up to this zone, these trend lines, this gap. It's got a lot of stuff up here, but it could easily shoot up after closing above that breakdown candle high. I can't say that that is bearish. That has to be seen as bullish, so I'm definitely keeping an eye on it. Let's look at SMH. Good indicator of tech. This, actually, I'm going to go to a weekly, and I have a pretty long-term trend line here. And we can see it had a pretty sharp rejection. It wasn't really great volume on the week. So we can't really take a ton away from this other than it's not bullish. It did get rejected. It can still break out next week. Anything can happen. Just because it's a tail candle doesn't mean it has to go down the next week. But it is a rejection nonetheless. It tried to break out and it couldn't. So I'll be watching this trend line on the SMH, and on the downside here, definitely some gaps. We have a short-term trend line here and a longer-term one, so it's a little bit stuck, but we'll be watching how it's acting early in the week. I want to move over to Tesla here, which was my top pick from last week, and guys, just check this out. Called it out after this 10-11 day on the weekend. And the next 4 days skyrockets 7%. So you guys can see the importance of weekly closes over or under trend lines acting as breakouts. And I actually have a few that I was watching, like Uber. Uber actually had a trend line here, right? And this thing ended up breaking out on Friday too. This is one that I didn't see till later in the week. And just look at the reaction after a weekly close, a weekly break of trend. These are really important things, guys. And one more for you. AMD. AMD, here's the Friday close. Here's the weekly close. Closes above this channel, this trend line here. Comes back to test it Monday, and boom, takes off 7% almost. So these weekly closes are something that I'm going to be trying to give a lot in these videos. And they're really important, man. Like, if you guys follow these and you're watching for the momentum that I'm watching on these weekly breakouts, you can make a lot of money on these picks, all right? So I am going to go through some picks right now for next week. There's not really too many breakouts that I'm seeing, but rather there's a lot of rejections that I'm looking for continuation on. So the first one I'm going to look at is Netflix. Netflix had earnings, shot up very far, and just gapped and crap. It was a very, very poor reaction to the earnings, and I just want to show you guys the weekly technical here that I'm looking at. Long-term trend line. I was looking at this trend line when it broke down, playing puts all the way down, and I was keeping an eye on how it would react after earnings, right? And along with this breakdown candle, I wanted to see if we could, possibly close above that, which would be very bullish. I'd be looking for a continuation, up to 340, maybe even higher. But we got a solid rejection with high volume. We could not close anywhere near the breakdown candle high, and I see that as a very strong rejection. And very strong rejections like this can often have some serious follow through. So I am looking for Netflix to eventually test this weekly pivot here around the 240 area. Anything below last week's low at 273.36, I will be looking to short intraday. I'm not going to swing this. I don't really do too many swings. That's up to you guys. But I am looking absolutely to play intraday short trades on this. We do have a support around 256.50, and then that 240 to 235 level here is going to be strong support, and I do think that we will get to that. I don't know if we'll get to it next week, but definitely be watching Netflix on the downside. One of my other top picks for the downside here is Facebook. We can see Facebook has not been the most hot stock, unlike some like Apple. So if we do get this downside that I'm looking for in the beginning of the week, Facebook will be one of my top picks. We have a breakdown candle high here that was also rejected on Facebook. Nice little inverted hammer. And we have a nice little demand zone here, right? And if we actually move out the symmetrical move of this breakdown candle and make it twice the move, I'm looking at about 159.59 for a target. Now I don't know if we'll get that all next week. It's possible, but I am looking for downside, especially under the week's lows. That's always a good breakout spot to trade intraday. And one more, the IWM is going to be, if we are going to get a breakout to the upside, the IWM is going to be my pick. Mainly because I don't see a lot of potentially bullish breakouts this week, but I think the IWM can be. As you can see back here, when the IWM breaks an important level, it tends to play catch up to the market. It's kind of a, as you can see, it's not as strong as the broad market, so it does like to lead to the upside or downside though intraday. So if SPY and if some of these indices, they try to break out to the upside, IWM is one I'm going to be watching, because this thing can fly up to 158, 160 within a couple days time. So that is if the market decides to go bullish. Definitely be watching the IWM on the upside. And those are all my picks for the week: Netflix, Facebook short, and IWM long if we do decide to get some more upside in the market. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please share this if it helped you at all, if you think anyone would be interested in hearing the picks or the analysis, and drop a sub if you're not subbed. And thanks for watching, guys. Have a good weekend.